Hello and welcome to another episode of Video Analytics 101. Today we're discussing the top 3 video analytics nonsense, the top 3 things you shouldn't talk about in video analytics and what you should talk about instead. So let's dive right in. All right, so why do we even talk about video analytics nonsense? What does it even mean? So video analytics nonsense are types of non-features that you find in cut sheets, that you find in RFPs, that you find vendors talking about, but also end users requiring, maybe because you talk to specific vendors. And when you read RFPs, for example, asking for these kind of features, you're sometimes wondering, what do they even mean? Why are they written in there? Because they don't really make any sense. So let's try to make the world a little bit of a better place and talk about what you shouldn't talk about in video analytics. So let's dive right in. Number 1, unusual behavior detection. What could that mean, unusual behavior detection? Because by itself, it doesn't mean anything. Unusual behavior is so different in every kind of situation that it's not a feature by itself. So what might be meant by this is self-learning analytics. And I did a separate video just about that, so you can check it out to find out how it works. But let me tell you that it doesn't really work the way we all think it does. It doesn't really work very well, so I would recommend not to use it in most situations. But maybe this is meant by unusual behavior detection. And if this is meant, just say so. Write in there, zero config analytics, non-rule-based analytics, self-learning analytics, but don't call it unusual behavior detection because it doesn't mean a thing by itself. Now, it might also mean something very specific to your use case, but that's very specific to the scenario where you're using it, because unusual behavior is very different on a railway platform and in a shopping mall, for example. So there it makes much more sense to clearly define what it is that is unusual there and require that. So detect a person that's going over a line on your railway platform, or detect a person that's going against the direction of the escalator in your shopping center. That makes much more sense. And then you can actually define those typical rules for video analytics that will detect the unusual behavior that you actually want to detect. This makes much more sense than requiring just video analytics that do unusual behavior in general, because I can tell you, you won't get a system that will satisfy your business use case. Number 2, object tracking. Object tracking has been around since the beginning of video analytics, and it's popping up here and there as well in cut sheets and also in RFPs. But it doesn't make any sense to require it because object tracking is not a feature. Object tracking is a technology that's used for a certain outcome. So in a way, it's similar to using a certain kind of programming language like C++. You also don't require C++. You require a certain outcome from your application. And similarly, you don't want to require object tracking, but you want to require the outcome. So if you want to have people counting, ask for people counting. Very, very likely, it will use object tracking in the background, but you shouldn't care about that. Same thing for other applications that use object tracking like perimeter protection or whatever. Don't ask for object tracking, ask for the feature. Now, what might also be meant by object tracking is maybe the end user wants multi-camera tracking, so finding the same person on multiple cameras. But this doesn't really work very well today. It works in very specific kinds of situations, like in perimeter protection, but it doesn't work in a general way, the way a user would want it to work. But again, if that's your requirement, write it there, write multi-camera person tracking. A third thing that might be meant by object tracking is PTC tracking. So a camera picking up a person and following this person through the scene. And this works. Again, there are some limitations, but in general, it works. So if you want that, the right term to use is PTC tracking. Now, number 3, we use AI. So that's the big AI out there that we see more and more, where vendors are talking about artificial intelligence or end users are requiring artificial intelligence. But again, this is a tool to achieve a certain outcome. Today, we use AI for most applications out there. So most video analytics that you see, yes, they will use AI, but it doesn't mean a thing. It doesn't tell you what your outcome is that you get out of it. For you as a user, it's important to achieve a certain outcome. It's not important how this is being achieved. And today we call it AI, but tomorrow we might call it something else, or we might do something else and still call it AI. So don't ask for technology, ask for the outcome, and then a vendor will be able to offer you something that actually makes sense for you. I have another bonus one for you, a bonus nonsense, and that is anything connected to accuracy. If you see a cut sheet somewhere by a vendor saying, we have 95% accuracy, we have 99% accuracy, just ignore it because it doesn't mean anything. First of all, accuracy is being defined differently by different people. There are many different ways to define accuracy, and I'll make a specific video around this. But in general, I can tell you that it's not a uniform measure of measuring accuracy. It just doesn't exist. So for example, it's very easy to achieve 100% detection accuracy, but it's impossible to achieve 100% detection accuracy while having 0% false detection accuracy. It's always a balance. And even if it's clearly defined how you calculate accuracy, it's very different to do it in a lab setup to the real world. And even in the real world, it's different depending on the scenario. So each scenario is totally different. So instead of talking about accuracy, what you should do is you should set up proof of concepts, test setups, pilots, where the vendor sets it up for you and shows you how it works. But crucially, try it yourself. Play around with the parameters, play around with the settings, so you have an idea how it works and where it doesn't work. And that gives you a much better idea if you can achieve what you want to achieve instead of having something written on paper that talks about accuracy, which just won't give you anything. It's not worth the paper that it's written on. And again, combining this with actually trying it yourself and stating clearly what your business outcome is, these in combination, these will give you a good video analytics system that actually works and will do what you want it to do. So instead of using all these nonsense terms, clearly define what you want to achieve, and then when you have something, try it out, play around with it yourself, and then you will get a good system. So that's it. Those are the 3 video analytics nonsense non-features that we discussed. I hope I played a little part today in our industry so we don't use them anymore, or we don't use them so much anymore. And I hope it helped you to find ways how to get a good video analytics system out there. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Also check out the videos that are linked. I will do another one on accuracy later on, as I mentioned, and otherwise, see you next time.